And that's a good thing. I remember a movie a long time ago with Charlton Heston and Brian Keith, and said, "A day above ground is a good day."
Yeah, it is. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. I learned that a long time ago. No question about it. Let's jump right in, and no one better to answer these kind of questions. I'm just going to throw you a generic, very wide open, take it however you want to go. But let's start on the global stage, Jim. In a geopolitical fourth turning sort of way, where are we? Where are we in the scheme of things right now?
I'm not really clear about the fourth turning. I am clear about a reset. I am clear about the golden age, the golden era. I am very clear about the elimination. It's not a good word. It's the weakening and the gutting of the cabal. Let me just give you a quick story. The Voice tuned me in back in 2013 and 14. He said, "Jim, the cabal, as you refer to it, is very large. And in the next 5 years, their entire middle ranks are going to be eliminated. It'll be like 80%. The top 10% will remain in power. The bottom 10% will be the foot soldiers. And this will take about 5 years." I said, "Okay, so like 2019, we're going to get some big changes that'll be positive for the white hats." We didn't call them white hats then. We didn't even call them the Patriots back then. We called them the gold bugs, I think. And the people, the fair money, the Austrian School of Economics followers. What was his name? Oh gosh, I can't think of the leader of the Austrian School of Economics.
Ludwig von Mises.
Von Mises, yes. Okay, I actually met his daughter in Germany, and I didn't know who she was. Later, I was told who she was, but anyway, we're defeating. I think we've actually won the war, Andy. I know this is a very strange thing to say. I think we've won the war, and now we're trying to set up the structure for. You call it the fourth turning. I call it golden era, QFS era, whatever you want. We're trying to set up the structure and avoid the booby traps, avoid the debt man switches, avoid the, remember it was 2 years ago, we heard about the threat of the Marburg, which was smallpox and Ebola. Okay, it didn't happen. Okay, 2 years ago, we kept hearing about, well, we're going to get some nuclear events out of Kiev and Ukraine and maybe Poland, false flag. Didn't happen. Okay. They didn't happen because we won. And I know that's hard to swallow, hard to accept, but I swallow it and I accept it. And I got to tell you that I've got 6 starred items here. Ooh, notes. I don't usually have a lot of notes, but I wanted to be prepared for you, Andy. I got to tell you, you've been kind of a mentor in an informal way for the last couple of years. I'd see a video from somebody and I'd watch 10 minutes of it. Okay, I got the bulk of that. And then somebody else would do the same. And then I'd get a couple of videos from you and I watch the whole damn 40 minutes because I learned stuff. And I put it in the newsletter and it adds value to the newsletter. But I want to try to, I've been trying now in the last day or two to come up with a few items where I can say, I'm going to add value to your table. And here goes. I'll give a preface. It was about 5 months ago. A client of mine said, "Jim, I've got a middle to high ranked military research contact, like scientific research. And he's very connected and he has permission to, it's not a leak. It's more like an intel drop. That's what they call it, an intel drop. And I've been getting it now for 5-6 months. And I'm telling you, they're deep. They're not 5 lines. They're 400 lines. There's a lot of information and some of it is scientific. And I don't want to get lost in the Malaysian airline. I want to get focused on some things that are really relevant right now. He claims that the white military alliance, you call it whatever you want. I call it Team Trump, the white hats. It's not just the United States, by the way. Trump is part of an organization that's far more than just the United States. He claims that Team Trump, with their confiscations and victories, mostly in the Pacific Rim, with gold wars, Team Trump has accumulated well over 100,000 tons of gold, and maybe as much as 300,000 tons of gold. And 100,000 tons of gold is, I believe that's 10 trillion. So the 300,000 would be 300 trillion. Now, he did not say how it was going to be used. He didn't say it was going to cover treasury bonds. Another thing he said in the related item is that Trump is going to saddle the cabal with the $34 trillion in debt. It's not going to be loaded on the U.S. households. It's not going to be draining gold that like is an extension of Fort Knox, which got recovered. So Trump has got well over 10, maybe 20 times more than Fort Knox. That's just one item. Another military drop. This is a while back. Russia hid 120,000 tons of gold during the entire Soviet era. And they hid it in the Orthodox Church behind false walls and double basements. 120,000 tons of gold. So the Russians are ready. Chinese, they're battling with the Asian elder families, that I'd rather not get caught up in that. He said that the White Alliance with Trump is in command of the next generation high-tech tools, devices. And I could blow you away with a couple things, but I'll just do one because it's a little funny. Here's one. And this came from the same guy. Last July, he said, Jim, I got some news for you. This is through the contact. Got some news for you. Trump won next November. Now just put those tenses together, okay? Trump won next November. So when clients asked me in July, August, September, and October, I said, Trump won. He already won. So don't worry about it. He won in November. What? Okay. It's a head scratcher, and it's a time travel bit of evidence from numerous. Okay. Here's one that's very recent. We've been told that there were 750 plane loads from the Vatican. No, it was a lot more than that. They got 40,000 tons out of the Vatican, and they're still pulling the gold out. There's an unspeakable amount of gold in the Vatican. I think it's connected to those, the tunnel, Istanbul, Jerusalem. Okay, it's very murky, that story, but you keep hearing 100 miles of chest-high gold. I mean, it's unfathomable. It's like 1 million tons. And let me finish this little soliloquy. I don't know. I get carried away, Andy. I can go on and on, but I just heard from the same guy last week. Bank of America has 1 foot in the bankruptcy receivership now. 1 foot in. I asked, give me detail as much as you got. And this was a different military source, but it's been very reliable too. I got 2 really nice, big military resources. Itchy ear, sorry. He said the word used was receivership. I said, okay, so trustee, U.S. government trustee, FDIC. And he said, didn't say FDIC. I said, what is it? He said, some kind of trustee, but it's receivership. I said, okay. Was there like a tripwire? Was there an event like with money laundering that got wrecked? Bank of America, money laundering, Bush narco bank, can't avoid that. And he said, I don't know, but that's very likely. I'll try to find out. Okay, Andy, there's a lot going on. And a lot of it has to do with gold. Some of it has to do with the big banks and how they're realigning. I honestly think that London got drained and the big U.S. banks are loading up, and you probably have a lot more information on that. Looks like it with the nod. they're loading up for the gold foundation. And I got to say something else. 18 months ago, I had a consult call, and these have been extremely valuable, Andy. I've done about 830 now in 5+ years. And they're boots on the ground. 1 in 10 is very valuable. The other 9 they're just good people, a lot of questions, and they're trying to learn. But this guy said, Jim, I was involved with some accounting, and every single big bank is loaded with gold, ready for the next chapter. Every single big bank. I said, beyond Wall Street and the big five? And he said, oh, yeah. But they don't have as much. The big five have enormous amounts of gold. They're not going to go under for lack of gold. And he said, don't mention this, don't mention that, don't mention this, because they'll probably figure out who I was and do me harm or cut me out of contracts. So, Andy, there's a lot going on, and gold is the future. And I'm excited by it all. But at the same time, I'm worried about something that I call the question of the seamless transition. What'll happen to credit cards? Will they all go away and be replaced by new ones? And every newsletter payment system goes to zero suddenly? Will credit for distribution, like in retail organizations, functions, will it go to zero and have to start over again? And we got 3 weeks of big fat nothing everywhere in the economy. Okay, there are a lot of questions, and Trump via Q has mentioned many times in the last 2 or 3 years, we're going to have it as seamless transition as possible. QFS is going to be a mirrored shadow system. And we're just going to walk it along and suddenly flip the switch. And we're running without any great interruption, which means seamless. And I just can't get a whole lot of confirmation on that. And therefore, I can't be real confident. And I'm worried, like many people are. But, here's one argument that you hear over and over again. Well, Jim, if your business gets wrecked from payment system, then so do another 150,000 or 200,000 businesses get wrecked. So look for the seamless transition. That's what I'm hoping for, Andy, but I don't know. What are you hearing about seamless?
Yeah, well, I think seamless will be very difficult in any transition. The question is it one that is it one that is a coordinated shift towards a new gold-backed framework, or is it something? Are the central banks who have been accumulating so much, as you're alluding to, are they hedging against a major currency event? That I don't know. One of the questions I was going to ask you, it's interesting, was that you've talked a lot about the accidental death, I think you call it, of a bullion bank triggering a systemic domino effect. Do you see that happening with Bank of America or with a bank? And who are the players that are most exposed beyond the banks? I mean, how far down the chain does this go systemically?
I think maybe a quarter of the S&P 500 companies. I didn't mention something that also came out in the Intel drop. I'll just say it because it's so important. I can't really say, well, I'm going to save that for the May newsletter in 3 weeks. And no, it's just too important. A quarter of the S&P 500 companies are at risk. And my military guy said it's a combination of criminal, finance, and insolvency. So, okay, it's not just big banks. So it's going to be like big corporation, multinational corporations. They're in trouble. And I said, how are they going to resolve that? And he said, well, hold on to your hat, because he was told by the military ranking guide. He said, Jim, I'm talking to majors and colonels, and they're in meetings with generals, and they've got permission to talk to me. And I said, this is great. Tell me all you can. He said, there might be a quarter. It's at most a quarter of the S&P companies, S&P 500. So, do your napkin math. You get 125 corporations. That's for the people who are math challenged out there. And there are a lot of them out there, and it's really quite disgusting. he said they're going to be assigned new CEOs and boards. I said, that's divestiture. He said, sounds like it. I don't know what else it would be, Jim. And I said, I don't either, if they're going to be assigned a new board of directors and CEO. So, okay, you asked, and the focus is really on the banks. And I have a really important point that I'd like to make. And we've got to learn from history. I know it sounds like so long ago, but for me, it wasn't. It was the Lehman crisis. It was 2008. And I gave a 1-year warning, Andy, 1 year in advance. I said, Lehman's going to fall. The credit default swap is zooming up. It's almost 1%. Normal is 15 basis points. Okay. The lesson I learned, and that was 17 years ago, was Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan had each more than double the exposure of Lehman in mortgage finance. You know, just cockeyed, crappy quality credit default. What do you call it? Credit obligations, CDOs, credit. I can't remember. They just make up names and this is very, very sophisticated. Yeah, CDOs, credit something obligations. And it was loaded with trash. It was like, Class B debt, and they called it AAA, and no one really checked. Okay, here's the lesson learned. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan had more than double the exposure of Lehman. So they decided to kill Lehman. It was odd man out. They're always looking for odd man out. And in 2003, Bear Stearns was odd man out. They were long gold, short dollar. They had to be killed. It took a long time to resolve their book of long gold. They had, oh my gosh. Okay, so, and that was previewed a couple months in advance, but not by me. That was a learning process for me. And from that, oh my gosh, what's next? And it was Lehman. And I had some good tips from clients. I know colleagues on the credit default swap. Here's how it applies to now. Bank of America is involved. I got to say something. I'm not going to be talking about child-related crimes anymore. I've had my life very close to totally destroyed from dark occult forces. And if you don't buy it, I don't care if you don't buy the argument. It means you don't know shit about it. I will talk about money laundering because it's finance. My theory is this, Andy. Bank of America is going to be singled out as the narco bank with money laundering. They're going to be implicated. They're going to be wrecked. They're going to be put through trustee bankruptcy receivership when all the banks are just as involved. But Bank of America has the Bush moniker. JP Morgan, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, the others, they don't. And I believe I have a different source. It's a very different type. I don't want to describe it, but the person said Wells Fargo has resolved its problems at the board level. And that was done over a year ago. So I don't expect Wells Fargo is going to get picked on. It may be more than Bank of America, Andy. I really don't know. We might see some smear on JP Morgan because, as we know, they've got $240 billion in criminal penalties and fines for their criminal actions with fraud. And that's a cost of doing business. It's really disgusting.
Let me ask you a question, Jim. If we really are heading in this direction, I guess you could even call it a global reset. Who do you think is writing the rules behind the scenes, and what kind of system do you believe that they're trying to build, maybe on the ashes of this current one?
Oh boy. I've wondered that for quite a while, and I've got some guesses. I can only speculate. My sources don't know. And when I ask a question like to the military source, who's running this? Who's running the show? Who's making the top level decisions? I'm told that it's like a group of 10, and some people call it Q. Some people call it Q. And I don't really completely buy into Q. I do partially. I do tentatively. I do with some reservation. But there's a group, Andy, and we can't put a face on it. And I asked a very interesting question, I thought, about 6 or 8 months ago to some of these sources. And I said, could the rule, you call it rules, I call it policy. Could the high level policy for the new era, call it the digital golden era of finance with the blockchain ledger, could its rules and policies be written by supercomputers? And we got some interesting discussions, but, nothing is resolved. And, if I'm the one asking the question and they don't know a whole lot more than I do, then they're just guessing and they're not really adding to my knowledge base. You know what I mean? I don't mean to be arrogant in any way, but there are a couple of the people who I do benefit from their knowledge base regarding that sort of thing, supercomputers. Oh, I've got one guy who has some military research background, and I haven't been in touch with him, but he went off to Panama with the sovereign, what do you call it? Sovereign investor? Can't think of his name. Black. He said, Jim, Black is really cool guy. But he knew about supercomputer simulation.
Simon Black,
yes.
He is very good. He's very good.
And I'm not a student of his, so I didn't benefit from that. But one of my clients was, and he's in New Jersey, and he's a really smart guy. And oh boy, he helped me a number of ways. But I think he might have retired from his business. And he said, I'm exhausted from all this criminality. He knew somebody in the HARP. Okay, that's where he added to my knowledge base in a 2010 visit for a couple of days. We just talked for hours. He said, Jim, I got nothing to do till tomorrow night. So we sat by the pool, had virgin pina coladas. I don't know what he had, but I have a virgin. I don't drink. By the way, I had my 38th anniversary of drug rehab.
Congratulations. Happy anniversary.
Okay. What he said was, when he was in military research, and he did it for about, he said, 6 or 8 years, he had one friend. He said, Jim, I had to get some distance from the guy because I realized that he was a psychopath. I said, were there many in military research? He said, more than you know. I said, well, no, I know that there's quite a lot. He said, well, more than most people think. I said, okay, what about this guy? He said, well, he transferred out of my group to go to HARP. And I maintained the friendship, even though I didn't like him, even though I thought he was a psycho. I maintained the friendship so I could maintain an information line about what's going on with HARP. He said, HARP is real. And they are, he said, the guy over in Alaska said, we're having a lot of fun killing people. Okay, that's your psychotic personality. And that's why my client made distance. And I haven't talked to him in a few years. Okay, I get a lot of unusual information, but to answer your question again in summary form, I think there's some high-level generals who might be kind of smart in business and, make some business rules. I think there's quite a lot of white hat military involved in digital finance. And they need to lay off Reggie Middleton and give him restitution. For God's sake, this is absurd what they're doing. But I also think that there's a lot of simulation going on, supercomputer simulation. And what I've heard mostly about the supercomputer simulation is it's for warfare. We have a war with China and Iran, and we lose in 24 hours. We have a war with NATO and US versus Russia, and we lose in 48 hours. We have a simulation about future technology and maybe a combination of food and water and disease and things like that, all the Malthusian factors, and it destroys the planet. And then you get that 2012 issue. All the different time machines, they stopped at 2012. Everything stopped at 2012. So they had a global conference and a meeting of the minds, and I think a lot of good people put their heads together. So, and they changed the course of human history in order to get past 2012. And there was a movie about 2012, and it was well done, kind of weird, but I really like the scene where they blew up the Yellowstone. When Yellowstone, it's the biggest caldera on the planet. It's like 80 miles in diameter. It blew up with his name, Woody Harrelson. Look, I'm a movie buff. I'm a sports buff. And I like them both. And without them, I'd go absolutely insane.
Yeah, I can't imagine life without sports. Defined my life. I think about that quite often. I don't think I'll ever grow up from that respect. Let me ask you a question while we're talking about military. I've noticed there are very few people, you're one of them, that has said things similar to what I've been saying about the military's role in suppressing silver. You've talked about it. What do you think their incentive is? I think it's fairly obvious, but do you think that suppression is starting to fall apart?
Yeah, it's starting to fall apart. I think it's not just the U.S. military; it's the Chinese military. The Russians. Have you seen a map of global silver production? I'm sure you have. Russia's down the list, and Mexico is more than twice of all Latin America combined. Okay, it's amazing. I'm concerned about a silver cartel being formed, but my military guys don't really talk about their motive to corner the silver market. They do make mention that there's a lot of silver being destroyed with a cruise missile, something like 17 kilograms. I can't prove that number, but I keep hearing that number. And that doesn't validate the number. It only makes people more curious. Well, damn it, where's the proof? When I talk with my colleagues, Andy, not military sources, I have very infrequent conversations and intel drops with the military guys. They're once every 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I just drop everything. I won't even watch my Boston Celtics. You know what I mean? I'll just, okay, well, what's going on? What's going on? And say, well, I only got 10 minutes. I say, okay, that's good. What do you got? What I hear is that the military really needs silver, and their opinion stated meshes, it juxtaposes well with some of my best intel from colleagues. Silver is going to become a national security metal. And Mexican policy has confirmed that to a very strong extent. I heard that Russia, China are inviting Mexico to create a silver cartel. Mexico will be in charge of keeping all of Latin America, the Andean region, Ecuador, Chile, Bolivia, and there's one more, Ecuador.
Peru?
Peru, yes. I always forget one. It's hard to get them all. But Argentina's in there. But Mexico would be like the dog master, okay? We got these 4 dogs on a leash, or 5 counting Argentina. And if they make silver a national security item, metal, then all this talk about rare earth metals, it's going to be overshadowed by a factor of 10.
It's interesting to your point, Jim. China is number 2 largest producer in the world. Behind Mexico, number 3 is Peru. China has been going to Peru, according to Sean Kunkun, the head of Dolly Varden. I've talked with him about this publicly, and others who have said that China is openly going to the miners in Peru, disintermediating the market, buying the doré and the concentrate and sending it back. They've built a deep water port there. You put it together, and what you're saying makes great sense. Mexico, China, Peru, number 1, 2, and 3.
And we're at war. Sense. And we're at war with Mexico right now. Hey, wake up, Americans. We're at war with the Mexican cartel. And Trump had a comment regarding Sheinbaum. She's so scared of the cartel that she can't think straight. Keep remembering that. Okay, are you aware, Andy, of the death count from the Mexican cartel from the last 10 years in Mexico?
No. Are you talking of anyone or Americans?
No, civilian deaths in Mexico.
No, I'm not. I am curious. So.
It's like 270,000. It's more than 5 times Vietnam.
Oh.
Okay, so they threaten judges, they threaten political figures, and I think they own Scheinbaum. Scheinbaum's a Marxist. She's got Chinese connections. The Chinese own all their ports, both sides. I mean, the Gulf side and the Pacific side. It's really quite amazing. China owns, I think, a big interest in Long Beach. We need to strip that. I got stories about Long Beach. I could go for 10 minutes about Long Beach. Underground port with elevators into the underground war. You remember 3 months ago that big gray mushroom cloud over Los Angeles that they called a brush fire? You gotta laugh. These guys are so stupid in their propaganda. The Los Angeles, what was it? I think February. I had it in my newsletter, and it was gray and blue. It was not orange and red, which is a brush fire. Wake up, people. We're being lied to. Okay, that was an underground detonation very near the Getty Center, and I'll leave that topic alone. Back to silver. It's a national security medal. and China got their mitts in the boardroom at JP Morgan. What was it, around 2015 or so? They bought Chase One Plaza. I can't remember the right name, but Chase and Plaza was in the name. And they got it for a song, Andy. They bought this huge building and complex, and they bought it for, I think it was something like 300 million. And I put the word out, what do you think the value is? And I got estimates between, 900 million and 1.6 billion. And so, okay, what's the story? And Rob Kirby put it together. He said China had a super mortgage on U.S. income tax, a super mortgage. And it was to guarantee a gold lease in 1999, and then it extended in 2005. And because of the recession, there was, it's permanent. We're in a permanent recession. We're in a depression right now. If people don't get that, they're just dead asleep. We defaulted on the super mortgage, and it entitled China to buy JP Morgan's building for the existing loan. That was the discount. They bought it at the existing loan on a collateralized loan for a gold lease, and it involved a silver lease too. Oh my gosh, it's all interwoven. And that made JP Morgan the bitch, the Chinese bitch in the COMEX. We assign you now to keep the silver price down because we're going to rebuild our Chinese industrial stockpile. Okay, it's all interwoven. And I don't think JP Morgan has ever exited that role of being bitch. I see you got baseball. I got to show you something, Andy. I just noticed your baseballs. It was 1973. No, 1974. 1974. I went to a Pittsburgh Pirate game, and it was a weeknight, and I was on the first base side, and there was a foul ball by a guy named Pachorik. Many people don't remember him. Pachorik of the Dodgers. And these two kids fought over the ball, and they dropped it, and the jackass picked it up.
Yeah, you can see my baseball cards. Those are all from the turn of the century and the early 60s.
The Yankees?
I got every Mickey Mantle up on top, every one of them. Mickey Mantle was my favorite.
He was a treasure. I never saw him live, but I saw Clemente 200 times.
I love it. Well, I got Clemente's rookie card right there, 1955. Baseball has defined my life, and baseball cards were one way for me to relive my childhood. Started doing that way back when. I would put in our newsletter, if you own baseball cards, send them in, and I'll trade you gold and silver for them. So I would get boxes up to my ceiling from people your father or grandfather's age, and I built all I became a power seller on eBay.
What years are these?
The tobacco
60s?
Cards are from the early 1900s, 1906, 7, 8, 9.
Oh, you got,
and
okay.
Then I have all of the Tops and Bowman from the early 50s through the mid 60s. And then I have the token Wayne Gretzky rookie, Michael Jordan rookie, Joe Namath.
Yeah, I had Topps baseball.
The one Topps card that is this is a picture of it. It's way up top there, so it's hard for you to see it. But this is a picture. This is the one card. That's the crown jewel, the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle. They're amazing cards, and I get more enjoyment out of my baseball cards than anything else. And I know that you're a big college sports buff as well. You go and watch NCAA.
Ohio State Buckeyes. They won the national championship. Now they got to have a new draft. Andy, the portal. It's a draft. Anyway, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but the portal is crazy. It is. I have some friends whose kids are college athletes, and not only that, they get paid a lot of money now. So the whole thing is interesting.
NIL, name, image, likeness, NIL contracts.
There's something to that, the kids playing video games and you're playing a video game with a college star on it and everyone's making money but the kid. I get it, but the whole thing has become a big business, maybe even more.
I'd like to have an NIL of the Golden Jackass. I'd like to make some money on that. I mean, I'm not joking around. I'd like to make some money on that.
Well, I'm sure you probably could. Nowadays, you just make yourself, what do they call NFT? And I'm suppose you got
to cartoonize the face, exactly, and make it recognizable. I have a friend, and her cousin did that with her husband, her, and 2 kids. And I said, I can recognize that. It's a cartoon, but I recognize you. Anyways, it's very well done. Back to silver. I'm very worried about Mexico, Andy, and let me just make a very unusual comment. I hope Trump creates a trade union with Canada and Mexico because it would enable our country to benefit from the gigantic silver resources of Mexico and the gigantic diverse resources of Canada. And I had a consult call yesterday from a guy in Alberta. And he said, yeah, you're right, Jim. Alberta's oil and gas, Saskatchewan and British Columbia are metals. Not just gold, but copper and zinc and all kinds of metals. I said, okay, all right. And now you got a rift between the Canadian government, federal government, central government, and bankers. Screw the West and control the rest. That's one of their mottos, and it's disgusting. They're going to fall apart. But anyway, he did say that the Western provinces are, when they don't, if you go beyond the tar sands of, I just saw a map, and Alberta is all through like 400 miles of oil and gas, and a lot of gas. I actually know somebody who was involved in, there was another consult call. He was involved with Alberta property title fraud. It was all the intermediate workings of the property ownership, and the Chinese were involved, and oh my gosh, in just a gigantic crime scene. And they tried to kill him. They didn't. They bankrupted him. They tried to kill him. And now he said 15 years later, he's got a bit of a recovery. He said, I'll never recover from that.
That sounds like something that'd be tough to recover from. Well, speaking of oil, you've been someone who's covered and spoken of the BRICS, and with Saudi Arabia and the UAE leaning much closer to the BRICS, UAE actually being a full member. Do you think this is the final chapter of the petrodollar? And are we watching its slow and painful death in real time?
I heard the petrodollar from all my, it's not just sources, it's colleagues. I got 7 really smart guys, and they're not just from the United States. It included Rob Kirby, but Rob Kirby was removed by Cabal forces using remdesivir. What I'm hearing is that it was about 2 years ago, the petrodollar was informally buried. Informally, 2 years ago, 2022, late 2022, the Saudis and I'm not really sure. I think Wall Street and the Saudis decided that this is not really relevant anymore. This is not powerful anymore. The real game is with the dollar and the treasury bonds and gold. And that's when they started dissolving and liquidating the petrodollar derivatives, which are, from my understanding, like less than a quarter of the volume of the other derivatives. And here's something that's not well known. It's the petrodollar derivative contract. It's the dollar and it's oil, obviously, but there's a third leg. It's gold and silver together with a 30-to-1 ratio, and that is getting busted. And I don't know how the petrodollar liquidation is going to get resolved. And one of my colleagues said it's going to force it to 30-to-1, and I said we're going in the other direction. And he said it could mean that the petrodollar is already liquidated. Don't know. We don't get news items on these things. We're not high enough pay grade. But regarding oil, I think we're really on the edge of the introduction by not just UAE. They're the innovator. It's going to, whatever UAE does, Saudi's going to follow. They're brothers and cousins, and my gosh, they got such enormous flat family trees. They got 20 half brothers. Oh my gosh. Okay, but my point is that UAE is going to. UAE has already done unique contracts for European oil sales, oil and gas. They're going to get XRP in there. That's what an Arab consult client said. And he's just a consult client. He's just a guy. He's in a business. He's not running the show. But he said, Jim, that's the talk. Okay. XRP is all through utilities, water, electricity. What's another one? Water, electricity, and gas. They have XRP payment, and it says right at the bottom, you got your receipt, satisfied by XRP transaction, blah blah blah. And UAE had a big contract, and they're using third-party payment systems. They've already broken ground on third-party payments. So I think what we're going to see real soon is like a contract between UAE and France where 20% of the payments are in XRP. It's just a matter of time. I believe that we're going to see BRICS advance XRP in cross-border trade payment before the United States. And it's going to cause some unusual problems for the U.S. banks because they're trying to accumulate XRP using a Securities Exchange Commission shield that's not all that well hidden. It's a joke. Okay, regarding oil, it's eventually going to break away from the Rockefeller control. And a very interesting phenomenon is happening, Andy, you're probably all over this too. The dollar is going to become an accounting unit rather than a trade payment unit, an accounting unit. Well, what's the market for iron, cotton, gold, soybean, oil, gas? What's the market? What's the price? It's going to be priced in dollars and settled outside the dollar. But tethers and connections and, strings to the dollar. And then that's already happened. Indian oil sales, they priced it in dollars and paid in rupee and paid in rubles. India is a really interesting country to watch because they broke away from the British leash around the neck. They broke away.
All right, let me, we've kind of been all over the place here, but I think people get where we're going, where you're going, and I love your take on things. It's fresh, it's different, it's eye-opening and mind expanding. I hope people are getting as much out of this as I am. And let me say, if you had to sum up the geopolitical chessboard What's the one move or blind spot that most people aren't seeing but will shape the next decade? What should people be looking at now that most aren't in order to make it through the next system without being a casualty of this change?
Be an investor in gold, silver, and XRP, and be aware that the old cabal is probably more than 80% destroyed. They're not going to be dictating the rules, and we're not going to have a low frequency planet. That's a very important point we haven't even begun to touch. We're no longer going to be the distressed. Okay, aliens call it planet Earth the distressed planet because we got such low frequency activity. We got such vile cabal leadership at the top. It's a cabal. It's a Geneva Octagon. It's the black nobility of the Vatican. Okay, focus on the dollar going away. Focus on the transition that I hope is seamless to minimize casualties of good people. Gold, silver, XRP, and a couple more. There was a really important press conference that Trump had in early March, and it was to update the crypto reserve. And he said it's going to be XRP, Solana, and a couple of others. And the press said, what about Bitcoin? And Trump's response was, well, yeah, that Bitcoin too. Oh, wow.
You know, I'll be speaking at the XRP conference in a couple of weeks in Vegas. Most of the people that listen to my channel are predominantly interested in precious metals. For people who don't have any exposure to cryptocurrencies, what kind of exposure should people make on XRP, dipping their toe in the water?
I would dip up to the knee. I think it's going to be a second opportunity for those who missed out on Bitcoin and that 10,000-fold run. I think XRP as a minimum will be $200. And, you know, there's going to be a BRICS contribution to XRP, and there will be a lot of discussion on whether the BRICS XRP is the same as the US XRP or the West XRP. The BRICS are going to bring a gold component to it, I think, before Ripple does. It's really important to know, not just for a feel-good experience, but we're winning, and we have practically won the war against the Octagon and the black nobility. We're raising the frequency of the planet. And here's a very interesting point to make. When you raise a frequency, a low frequency entity cannot coexist. That's very heavy. And I first heard that a week ago from a friend in Texas. I said to her, I need to let that sink in. That is very profound. We're elevating the frequency of the planet Earth, and we're getting a lot of exposures of things. Okay, it used to be like every 2 months or so, we'd get a big exposure of something really big and ugly and nasty and important at a geopolitical level. Now we're getting one every 2 days. We're getting an acceleration of events. I think XRP is going to be a leader, but there are going to be like 3 others that will do very well and be multiples of 100-fold in their gains. I think we haven't talked about this, but, you know, just as a closing note, I believe in the next couple months, silver is going to break. It's going to break in the next couple months. I usually don't talk about timing, but let me just say that it's going to be better than 50-50 chance silver breaks over 35 and begins to cause a series of problems in a domino before the summer's over, before we go back to school. Something is going to happen, Andy, and what I tried to do in the April report was to identify potentially like 8 triggers. What's it going to be? Well, you know, sign up, go to it's not a slash, it's okay, golden-jackass.com. And, you know, sign up for the newsletter and check out the April report. I got my triggers in there. And it is not just a conflagration of the multiple leasing. That's just one of several.
Well, I think people should, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask you had we had a little more time, was In fact, the actual question I wrote was, you said silver is sitting on a powder keg with multiple weak points ready to blow. Which fracture do you think gives way first, and why now? I'll let people go to your newsletter to read that, since we're already coming up here on an hour. You're a fascinating guy, Jim. If you want to give away just one of those fractures that you think could give way first and pique people's interest into checking out your April newsletter.
I gave one about multiple leasing, but I'll give the other. It's Bank of America busting. They are rumored to have, I heard, over 1 billion ounces short. But
Ted Butler always used to say that. I agree. I've heard that as well.
That could cause a domino effect. It could cause a couple of bullion banks to go under, and then before you know it, there's another bank that's got investments connected, and there you have it. Then things just break apart. You get liquidation, you get covers, you get short covers, and before you know it, we're at 55.
At the same time that you're seeing major delivery stress coming out of the LBMA, it's all connected. It is. It's very interesting, and you put a fresh spin on things, Jim. So people are able to check you out on golden-jackass.com. And do you do anything else on X or anywhere else, or is that?
No, I've got something that I must say, and I usually start it off, but I didn't this time. I've been forgetting. I have no social network account where I post anything. There are about 12 different YouTube and X accounts, and some of them are pretending to be me.
Yeah.
Some of them are giving investment advice on YouTube, and it's not me. There's one joker who's got a Southern accent. I don't. I have an accentless Midwestern accent.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I get the same thing. I understand that. And so the best way and the only way is to check you out on people's interviews like this, or on your newsletter, which we will put a link to that.
Let me just say, though, there are legitimate people with accounts on YouTube and Twitter and elsewhere, Rumble, and they call it, Jim Willie studies, or Jim Willie discussion, or Jim Willie room, or whatever. That's great, because they bring in stuff that I have, and they never claim to be me.
Yeah, they do that for me too. They do that because they monetize their channel by you. You're the reason people click on there, and every click is money for them. I get it, as long as they're not doing something. Yeah, they're honest and complimentary. Jim, you're a fascinating guy, and I'd love to have one of those. What did you call it? What kind of drink? What's a drink with no alcohol in it?
Oh, virgin pina colada.
Virgin, yes. I haven't had one, but I'll give it a shot anyways. It would be nice to sit down and pick your brain unfiltered.
It's good if you're going to be doing some swimming. You don't want to get a little tipsy when you're swimming.
You never know. You never know. Depends what kind of pool you're in.
Might take some water into your lung sacs.